I knew a girl once who was growing up in Africa who, from a very young age, felt that God was calling her to be a missionary. And she accepted that call. She prepared herself, even as a young person. She began memorizing scripture. She participated fully in church. She was growing up in Africa, but she went back to the States. She took every opportunity she could get to develop her leadership skills. She wound up going to a Christian college to become a missionary. During her college years, she took 2 semesters abroad in China to equip herself to be a missionary. In a gap year, she did YWAM study and DTS training, did evangelism course in Australia, always preparing herself to be a missionary because God had spoken directly to her about being a missionary. And she wound up being a missionary. She wound up going to China as a missionary. Interestingly, at the same time, there was a little boy growing up in Germany, very secular part of Germany. His parents were Christian. His siblings mostly were not Christians, and people around him certainly were not Christians. And so probably even more remarkably than God speaking to this little girl, he was speaking directly to this little boy as well about being a missionary. But he also equipped himself in every way he could on his own. He got very, very little encouragement, either from family or from anybody else. But he equipped himself in every way. He did study and study abroad, and he wound up being a missionary in China. Now, I tell this story because that little girl was my daughter, and that German boy is now my son-in-law. And I can understand how that little girl might have an idea about being a missionary because her friends were missionary kids, just as she was, growing up in Africa. But it wasn't her father, it wasn't me that was speaking to her about being a missionary. God was speaking directly to her. And certainly the same was the case for this boy. He wasn't growing up around missionaries. And so he didn't have that as a role model. But yet God spoke directly to him. So it's a contemporary, very personal example of God speaking directly to a young person, just like he spoke to Samuel, about being in his service. And God honored it. And they both became missionaries.